Good afternoon, all. So let's see, let's find. So you guys can all see my slides here, right? So I got
Yes.
just a very short slides, and then we'll jump into the GP demo. But from an Avalara standpoint, really we're here to just in general kind of help you take care of a lot of the challenges that we run into with tax calculation, right? So we're built into the various connectors like GP, so that as you're building out the quote for orders and invoices, those kind of components can reach over to our system, be able to calculate the tax real time. So you're seeing, whether there's tax or not based on exemption certificates or the goods or services or the nexus. We can manage all these kind of different components and the filing returns, and we've got tools for property tax and consumer use as well, all built into the various library within the Avalara sphere. So as those transactions are being run through, so quote, order, and invoice out of the GP side, we are validating addresses first of all, right? So you're saving that invoice. We're going to validate out those addresses first of all to make sure they're good. We are verifying that, hey, did you check to say you're actually registered in this particular jurisdiction? We will look for the customer exemption certificates to see, hey, do we actually have something on file? So if you have a certificate for California, for example, they would be exempt, but if you didn't have one for Arizona, they would be taxed, right? So we can kind of look through those status. There's different sourcing rules. So whether it's origin or destination or kind of a mixed bag like California, that logic's built in there to be able to handle the sales tax. We're taking the jurisdictional information that you give us with the transaction, and we're actually converting those down to lat longs. We're going to go pinpoint into somebody's driveway and be able to understand truly where you are, which is very important in a place like Denver, Colorado, for example. You can have two houses next to each other, same zip, same +4, totally different tax rates. We're able to pinpoint down exactly where you are in those particular situations. So we will take and look at each individual line item as you run through. So we will typically default things to tangible personal property, taxable thing, right, based on those different jurisdictions. But you can align with different goods and services so that we can find out, hey, is that thing taxable? Is it exempt? Maybe there's reduced rates or thresholds, right? As part of the transactions itself. Um, so we're kind of driving those different pieces in there. We're going to send that information back over real time so you can see it again on screen. And then, ultimately, as we push those through to invoice, shows up in AvaTax, so it can be there for reports and the return services that we've got with the states. And ideally, we're trying to make sure that you sleep peacefully at night so that you don't have to think about sales tax. But really, kind of at the end of the day, all this information is going to show through. You're going to see again, kind of high level. Again, do we have nexus in that state? Is that customer taxable? Is the product taxable? And then we can give you all those different layers of tax that are going to break out. The rates are actually stored in AvaTax versus back in the main system to be able to make it a little easier so you guys don't have to maintain those different components. And really, again, we're trying to make these things so multiple different sources come in. You've got one single, source of truth as far as the engine coming through, so we can pass all that information, whether it's from ERP or ecom, into AvaTax. Do the calculations. We're tracking liabilities across all the different jurisdictions. You're getting consistent tax rates. We're tracking your economic thresholds, right? So we can see if you potentially need to register in new states and provide that notification as far as things on there. So it's designed again to kind of make those things easier from a sales tax transactional standpoint and kind of drive through with those things. So again, the intent here, integrate seamlessly within your connector, make sure we're staying compliant first and foremost, right? And, really scalable as far as kind of building things up through. And then again, we've got different components in here depending on what the needs are. AvaTax is the main tax calculation engine. We have logic in here for AP as well, so we can handle on the calculations of tax on the purchase order and invoice, as well as kind of vendor bill compares. There's cross-border logic built into here for shipping internationally. Obviously, your VAT calculation kind of ties in with that, and exemption certificate management and returns. So a lot of different areas that we can potentially kind of tie in with these different things. So to kind of get into the software itself, from a GP standpoint, there is a brief configuration in here really just to get us, hooked into the AvaTax engine. So there's a module basically that gets installed into GP. This again will set aside core functionality here, push everything over to the Avalara engine. But there's an account number and a license key. You've got a sandbox for production, and then we point that towards either whatever company that you're setting these up initially on the AvaTax side. There are one of the main things in here from a good and service standpoint is depending on how you want to define those different products, GP gives you 4 different fields that you can align one of our Avalara tax codes to so that we can do the mapping. So giving you the flexibility here to just choose which of these that you would use. We default into taxability, but customers can certainly, if they're using that for something else, they can pick one of the other three. Whether that's that individual item or you want to do more of a group, right? Kind of that item class. The big guy here is this tax schedule ID, right? We're going to create one called Avatax. That's the part that sets aside core functionality, right? And pushes everything over to us for the actual tax calculations, right? So normally having to maintain those independently. All the rates and all the things are going to be stored from the Avatax side, and we're going to use that particular code to drive those things back and forth. And there is, again, address validation built into here for both US and Canada. So that we can, again, make sure that we're getting clean address information to start out, and then again, help with that, getting down to lat long with the tax calculations. So connector part, pretty much a one-time done, set up, and then you're probably not coming back into that. But the other pieces, typically where you're seeing us here are over on your item cards. So as we pull up any given item, right, these different fields here are where we would identify the Avalara tax code. Right? And again, there's a series of different codes that you would just say, again, if it's tangible personal property, just our default thing, but there's codes for repair and for software and for all sorts of other different components and shipping and all those kind of things that we would want to be able to identify because we know they vary in taxability from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So you would just enter whatever that code is, based on the Avalara tools into here from a transactional standpoint. In this case, every time I sell a processor, behind the scenes, it would sell whatever relevant code to Avatax, so we would know what that needs to do. So some mapping up front to kind of get those through, again, where needed. But that is going to be one of the key components from the transactional standpoint. One of the other places you're seeing us is over on customer card. So as we pull these guys up here, and there is a couple of different pieces where we tie in. So we built in the ability, again, to address validate the customer when they come in. So as you're setting these up kind of net new, we can say, hey, this is the address I was given. This made a real-time call to my Avatax engine to say, well, hey, that's really what it should be, right? So we get clean address to start to help out with that process, right? There is, again, also things in the back end that will do this kind of automatically, but it gives you the ability to kind of start things out fresh. There are also tools in here for our exemption module. So if we know the customer is exempt, we leave them taxable here. You can push the data directly over to the Avatax engine, so I don't have to go there and set things up. I can send out requests for certificates directly from here, from GP. I can pull back the certificates that I've actually got in place, right? So I can actually see the PDFs that are stored in Avatax without leaving my day-to-day here in GP. So again, just makes everything easier, one centralized place to kind of drive through with these different things. So we have, those are really the ties kind of on the behind the scenes piece. When you are building out your documents, pretty much standard quo, right? Or status quo, right? We're building out kind of the overall process, right? Somebody's going to buy a thing, right? And the reality, the call here is really on the save, right? As far as it pushes through, but I've got the ability here to see it, what tax actually would be beforehand. So this came back with a tax amount, right? So I can actually see here, Nexus in my state, customer was taxable, product was taxable. It gave me those different details. And I have the ability here to be able to see those different layers of tax that break out. Right? All these rates, again, stored on the Avatax side, returned back here from the transactional standpoint. So a lot of things happening under the hood here, right? But just trying not to get in the way of the normal day-to-day, right? As far as your overall process. And that's really where Avatax fits into the GP side of things. So we crammed a lot of stuff into about 15 minutes. Definitely, again, if we need to be able to, if you guys are interested in demos, we can definitely get you hooked up with some reps on our side, and you'll probably be seeing me again at another time.
Thank you so much. One thing I do love is how it's all happening behind the scenes. You don't really have to worry about anything.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.